Okay, Veronica. Hi, Veronica. I just sent you the a chat request, and let's try again. Okay, Veronica. Sent. Let's see. Oh, ada Rio Moreno. Selamat malam, Rio. Okay, we're waiting for Veronica Nunn to join. Now I can see your picture. That's very nice outdoor.
Can you see my face though?
No, I don't see your face yet, but I see the park with greens and tree.
That's the back of my house. Let me turn it around. Now we gotta turn it around. Hold on. I don't know how to do that. Hold on.
Well, you just have to tap on your live camera, and then it will, just like when you want to take a photo selfie.
I know, but it doesn't have on here. Doesn't have it on here on my screen where I can tap it around.
Let's see. I think you do have, because you can see there.
I do, but
okay, I will just wait.
Hold on 1 second. There we go.
There we go.
Now you can.
Now we can.
Finally.
How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well as well. Okay. So that we see there's some people coming here. I'm just going to say hello to them, and hello everyone here. Selamat malam. And as usual, everyone who are joining here can ask questions, can make any comment, just type on the comment. And then if we know the answer, we will answer right away, immediately. And if we don't know the answer, then it might take a while.
Right.
Okay.
Well, it might be all of the questions I don't have answers to.
So, first of all, I would like to introduce you first to the people who are joining us here tonight. And this is Veronica Nunn, my best friend, and we've been friends since, let's say, 40 years.
Right. That. Yeah.
At least that, yes. And I'm very happy to see you again tonight. And then we're going to have a lot of topic to discuss about. And I really hope, we both really do hope that the people who are joining here are going to ask a lot of questions. It is funny here in Indonesia that they keep coming in and going out, coming in and going out. It doesn't matter. Anyway, okay. So we would like to discuss about the music education globally. What I mean is that generally, and then later on we will go into the topic of jazz, because a lot of Indonesian young people here love to play jazz and love to learn jazz.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I would like to ask you about the condition. Let's not talk about the COVID, because it has been exhaustively discussed, and just would like to know the information about the situation now. How do you do the music class online, for example?
Okay, well, just so I can get my 2 cents in, COVID, this is serious. So think of it as serious. Think of it as bullets flying in the air and you're walking, and there's any chance of you can get hit by it. So really take care of yourself. Everybody's on here. Just please do. As far as the educational thing, everything had gone online with the music schools and with regular school, right? And then they're dividing now.
Hold on.
Cool, right?
You know, it's a big controversy here because of this new Delta variant. So everybody's like worried.
I see.
Because it now is younger people can be infected by it. So in any case, but the online aspect of this, and I won't go through all of the the CDC regulations and stuff, but a thing that I think is a benefit coming out of this, which I just feel that the deaths and the sicknesses it's a horrible thing, and I and we don't want any more of that. And I believe in my Buddhist practices, we turn poison into medicine. So you take something that is a horrible situation and you try to extract the greatest value. So in this, the greatest value is that we now have to go online. And as
Right.
musicians, we are curtailed. Our activities are curtailed because we can't really play in clubs. But here in the United States, we've been doing a lot of outdoor festivals. Okay. And so people have been playing out and they're separated and, 6 feet apart. And there is not a mask mandate right now for outdoors if you're vaccinated. But basically, this whole concept of having to go online for schools, it's really fascinating because we now need to move into a more technological phase. We have to, begin to use our phones in a certain way or be very conscious of how we sound. But online education is especially for music, is very difficult because there's a delay when you're trying to play something and explain things. And just also there is that, the thing about music is that real human, in-person contact. But I think it's real important to learn how to be isolated and still create music, still be able to have your heart in it. Just because you're recording it and you can play it back later or fix it, it's important to be in the moment with that. And I think it's difficult for schools to teach online. I mean, theory, yeah. You can, this is how you transcribe, this is that you can, but, education in music is really the performing of it, So hopefully that answered the question in a
Yeah,
long way.
it did. It did. Um, with us, it's even more difficult because in Indonesia.
Wait, I can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Hello, hello. Can you hear me? I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Now I can, but not through my headphones. Hold on.
Okay, let me
Okay, well,
see.
I'll not, you can hear me though, right?
Right, but can you
Okay,
hear me
cool.
now?
Now I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, so here in Indonesia, we don't have the internet all over the country. Only certain places. For instance, in the remote area, even no electricity yet. So there are a lot of children who are having a difficulty since this pandemic to study and to learn because no internet. So I've been asking the minister to provide for free, or at least do something and then an alternative instead of having online because they don't have electricity. Never mind a internet. And it was so funny though, like almost a year ago, they suggest that the student should learn and should install the Netflix. Can you imagine? No electricity, and a lot of people don't know yet how to operate the applications. And they should install Netflix. So there are many, many problems, which is a social problems and an educational problems. I am not going to go in depth into that because it would be too long to discuss about. We are struggling here, and then we as an Indonesian, I think that we know the solution, but sometimes when we offer the solution, they just don't want to listen. They just go ahead with their, how it is, right? Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's interesting because there is a lot of people in the United States, especially like in Brooklyn, they don't have laptops. They don't have access to the internet. A lot of people think everybody in America does, but a lot of the people like, further out in Brooklyn or areas that are more economically challenged, they don't have laptops. So they really rely on, or internet service. They rely on the library. So they go to the local library where they have all of the, laptops and desktops set up, and people go there to study and do their work and things like that. And it's a lot of people don't have access to it here. So it's interesting, like how do you get education to people? How do you educate people in the middle of a pandemic, right? Where you need the services of an online program, and yet
Hmm.
people don't have access to any of that, you know?
Right.
It's
And
and the thing is, I think that you can, if we infiltrate, and I don't know if that's the right word, but if we infiltrate um, people out and we get to them where there's one person in the area that knows music, then they can wear the mask 6 feet apart and then teach everybody else in the in the area. You know what I mean? So the whole
right,
key is
right.
to get one person in all these areas that are from your school, know the music, can teach, and then they can teach everybody there, you know.
Yeah. Oh, for instance, some teachers in middle of Java, they had to travel with the motorcycle. Like they get up very early in the morning, 5 o'clock or even 4 o'clock in the morning, and then they travel like almost 4 hours to get to the students. And you know what? They carry along their board. Yes, yes, on their back. And then
Right.
so they and they go and teach, and
Right.
then teach the whole day, and then afterwards they have to come back again and drive back again for 4 hours.
Wow.
Can you imagine? And this go every day every day and every day. So I posted the video once because it was viral in the international media. So I posted that, and then I kindly asked the Ministry of Education, please look that there are millions of people in the remote area. They are doing the same thing, and then this is a huge problem for the education. As
Oh,
I
absolutely.
as I already mentioned, no internet, no electricity. So no, please, not Netflix, or they don't even know how to. Another problem. This is very crucial. The teachers, a lot of them don't know how to use the application, and they ask the students to write the homework or to record the homework. Okay, with a video and then post it. And as you know, the video, the size can be very, very large,
Yeah. Hmm.
megabyte, sometimes even gigabyte.
Hmm.
And most of them don't know how to convert or to compress, even though we know that nowadays you can compress that online, any kind of a video, right, to a very
Hmm.
small, small, small size. And this is also a huge problem because a lot of young people don't know how to compress the video, how to send the. I mean, it's so complex, Veronica. And
I know I couldn't even get my sound working here on Instagram. I mean, you till the other day you showed me how to use live Instagram. I'd never used
it's another thing. They know how to use the Instagram and Facebook and all that. But when I ask them, for instance, the young students to compile or to overlay the videos, for instance, because they cannot sit here or on site in the choir class, so they have to make the video. And then they said that, well, we don't have the application yet. And then I laughed my head off. I said, look, you operate your handphone every day, and it is called smartphone. And then
Yes.
you don't know how to compile the video. I mean, you know the Kid Master, you know the Move Afi or Filmora. There are many video applications. This is one thing that I don't understand. But I do understand now because the problem here is because of the education in Indonesia. They do not teach the critical thinking and problem solving. They have to memorize everything, like the music. They have to memorize, read the notation, and then they are going to be in the exam, and they will be asked what they have memorized.
Yeah.
It's not what they know, but memorizing. So this
Yeah.
is the huge problem here in our country. So anyway, how is it in your country?
Well, I think education has always been a problem around the world, not necessarily in Western European countries, but definitely everywhere else. In the sense that, you know, to me, and I kind of follow. I read John Dewey has a great book called Art as Experience, and there's some great pedagogies on just education in general, and
Mm-hmm.
um, and Magaguchi was an educator in Japan, and he was imprisoned for this. But he felt that education it needs to be applicable. So, and you and I were talking about this the other day. Why learn something if you can't apply it? What's the point? I mean, you can go to a school and learn how to take a car apart and put a car back together, right? Just by books, just reading it and talking about it in class and memorizing and taking tests on it. But until you actually take the car apart and put the car together, it's the information is pointless, right? And it's the same way with things that are not as physical. Like a car is a physical thing we can look at, but music, for instance, or art, or it comes more, and you can learn the techniques of it in school and apply that. And you need to know those basics. Those basics are key. We are able to communicate, you and I, because of the 26 letters of an alphabet that was created, you know what I mean, for the English language. Then there are all the other languages, right? But the alphabet is kind of the building blocks to create words. I don't know what you guys call the alphabet in your
we call
country.
it alphabet as well.
Okay, so with those 26 letters, or however they are, how many they are, the combinations create words, and in those words we come to understand what someone means, right? And I feel that the education problem in everywhere is that everybody's under the pressure to have everybody test high. Some of my friends who are teachers say that the board doesn't really care about whether the kids are absorbing this. They're more interested in whether or not they pass these efficiency tests. So they send out all these efficiency tests in the schools, and then the kids have to get a certain point system. They have to get to a certain amount so that then the government can fund the school to be able to continue to educate, okay? And that's not fair. It's not fair, because you get kids who memorize, right? They just memorize the stuff so they can pass the test, and then they get out into the real world and they don't know how to apply it. They don't know how to apply what they've learned, or you don't need to apply it. And one other thing I think is a problem with education, especially in our country and in other countries that aren't European, is that it doesn't include the history of the country. It doesn't include the complete history. Like, we have this big thing happening right now in the United States on critical race theory, and a lot of people are upset by it because they're thinking that, oh, well, we don't really want to know that part of our history. How we massacred indigenous people, how we enslaved. We don't want to know about that, but we're fine with all the other stuff, right? And I think, and all the other stuff, and I'm not down on Western Europeans, so don't get me wrong, any Western Europeans are watching this. But that's kind of what we have right now. Like, even just with music, they think the history of music is Western music, Western civilization music of Europe. But in countries like Africa, Indonesia, China, they have a plethora of unbelievable music theory that we never talk about in the music schools. Right, because they hold the European music as the thing. You got to know Bach, you got to know Beethoven, you got to know Mozart, which is great, but it's just one part of it. There's so many other parts to music education that should be included in a curriculum, and I feel that you do that. I feel that you're always, really putting a lot of effort into making sure that the students embrace their culture, embrace their musical culture, because that's how you become an innovator. That's how you become a Coltrane, so to speak, or a Miles Davis, or any of the people that you might admire, because they take where they are right now in the moment. I don't live in 1923. So I grew up in the 50s through the 60s, so I'm influenced by the music of the 60s. So when I do jazz, it's going to have that in it, because that's me. That's part of my upbringing, and I grew up in the South, and I'm African American. So all of these things are inside my music, and it should be inside education as well,
Right. Speaking about the culture, we we do teach this is here in the school. I mean, really, I make that such an endeavor and an effort for the students, especially the Indonesian students, to appreciate, to respect our own culture. That is why we have the compulsory course, which is a traditional Indonesian music, where they have to dance, to learn to dance from North Sumatra. We call it here from Sabang to Merauke. So North Sumatra to Papua, West Papua. At least they have to know the, how you call it, the timeline and the basic dance and the basic way of playing those traditional instruments. And a lot of the students, they don't even know. For example, I told you the last day that we made a video of a keroncong music. And keroncong is one of our traditional music. And I made a challenge for them to improvise over keroncong. And some of them said that it's very difficult because we don't know how to play. And this is a mind-boggling for me, because how come that you study jazz, you want to play like Coltrane or like whatever, and that is an American culture, yeah. And we, as an Indonesian, we don't even know how to play our own traditional music, and this is very sad. And as you said, remember our discussion the last time. I think it is very important before we go to jazz now. Yeah, it's very important to study the history before we even learn the licks and memorize and so. And another thing is, I would like to quote you as well about the classical music. Well, I don't care if the classical musicians are here and they're going to be offended. I don't care, because this is the truth. Okay, I'm becoming radical now because I have been discussing and debating and I feel like I'm talking to the wall. You see, and this is this mindset about everything that comes from Europe or from the States. That is the best thing, and that is what we should learn. And the classical music is the real music. And if you don't study classical music, you are not a real musician. So I told them, you are not the real musician because you memorize everything that is written, right? And I mean, the composer before, they were all the masters of improvisation in their time. And they wrote it down, what they remember, and that became a notation. Actually, it was a notebook for me. And they didn't say specifically that you students or you who will come after me will have to play exactly the way I have written. They never said that. They were only indicating like allegro, the tempo should be. And until today, nobody knows what allegro is. It was like, yeah, it's about this fast. No one can say exactly how fast Bach played, how fast Chopin played at that time. Maybe, well, for instance, Rachmaninoff, I think they know because Rachmaninoff did the recording, so you can hear the tempo, right? But it was recorded. But what is written on the notation, nobody knows exactly. What is crescendo exactly? How the pianissimo should be played? How low should it sound? Yeah. It's just an estimation. So everyone who says that classical music is the real thing and other music is nonsense and whatsoever, I tell you, you better study music. Okay, I have a lot of questions sent from a lot of people about jazz. Recently, there's a young student who is studying music, and he wants to study jazz, although his major now is classical music, but he wants to study jazz. So he was asking me, what kind of a licks should he learn, the chops, and what is the Ionian system, and all this theory. And he was so surprised when I told him, first you learn the history. You learn the history of the United States of America. You learn it from the beginning.
Well, you learn African American history is what you learn.
African American, yes, that's what I mean. And then starting from the slavery, and then you have to, as I told you, remember that when we are not in our discussion, that they should also know the burlesque and then the minstrelsy, musical and all of that, the gospels,
Ragtime,
the striped
ragtime.
piano, the field hollers, and Negro spirituals,
New Orleans sound that
right?
came out of that, yeah. And it has to
Right.
go further back than just slavery. It goes back into the
Yes,
country
yes.
of Africa, yeah. Because
Right,
jazz
to
is
the
rhythm,
country.
jazz is percussion, yeah.
Right, right. And I would like to mention one thing about Tarzan. A lot of people like to watch Tarzan, and this is a very, very sad story, actually, if we know the background, right? Because of the king of Belgium. At that time, he was raiding, and then he was mining the diamonds, and then the people from Congo. I mean, that was a long time ago. So the study of Africa as well, I told my students, it's very important because mostly the people who were brought to United States before it became United States was mainly from the West Africa, from the Ivory Coast to study the the all these percussions and pattern
Songs and
songs.
flute
Yes,
stuff, yeah.
exactly. And like
Yeah,
you said, Veronica, when they came to United States before it became United States, and they came from different country, not country, but different areas, and they didn't understand each other, even though they came from Africa. I mean, it's a huge continent, right? And then, okay, so now I come to the point. What do you say? What is your opinion about why is it important to study the history before you study the music itself, especially jazz now?
well, the reason I think is, you don't have to become a historian, you know what I mean? Like you put, 35 years in the history before you pick up an instrument. But I think that when you know the history of where something comes from, you can then begin to look at the culture. And the culture is the way of life that people, because out of culture comes art. Out of culture, out of where you live every day, your neighborhood and your parents and their parents' parents and all of that and traditions and why you eat at 7 o'clock every night or in the morning. All of that is part of a culture. And
Mhm,
out of that comes a way to express that culture.
mhm.
And it is what comes out of that is a creativity, and people use various things like the pottery is art, pottery, and creating utensils and stuff to eat, right, back in the
Right.
early parts. That is actually art because it's utilizing, you can use it, and art
Mhm.
is something that can be used. It's like why is it that you go to the museums, you look at the Louvre Museum and all of that, and they have all these paintings up, and they tell you these are masterpieces. Yeah,
Right.
but why? Why are they masterpieces? And why is it that you see, in a museum, all of these, elaborate hand painted batik, for instance, when I went to the museum of all of this, but this is more of an archaeological thing as opposed to art that belongs in the Louvre. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's not
Right.
thought of as art because it's a thinking. For instance, when we talked about Africa, for instance, um, Africa is huge. Right now, everybody has a concept of Africa, and they think of it as everybody in huts, squatting in dirt, and playing drums. Right? No one knows. No one pays attention. Africa is more modern, and it's got huge cities, bigger cities than New York. Nairobi, you go, it's incredible. It's a massive, massive civilization and all of it. And because it was colonized, Indonesia was colonized. Dutch came
Right.
in there, put their foot down, said, okay, this is ours, and we want everybody here to do what we want you to do. We want you to believe in this. We want you to do this. We want you to dress this way, and because you're not civilized enough to be able to take care of your own stuff. This is how this starts. Okay. And because we're so inundated all the time, we're constantly told and in schools taught this is the history, this is this, that we begin to believe as a people that this is true, where in reality it isn't true. So
Mhm.
to then go into the part about jazz and learning the history, you know, our music, and you talked about kids who don't know their traditional music in your country. Our
Right.
kids here don't know about jazz either. First of all, it got taken out of the school because no one funds for education here. We get very little funding for education. And in the educational system, unless it's a charter school and people can pay for it, you don't get music programs or art programs. So once you remove art and culture from any educational curriculum, you now have people who cannot think for themselves. They cannot think, as you're saying, in a analytical or critical fashion to look at this and say, I'm going to apply this or I can't apply this, And so in studying and understanding that jazz, like all of the elements of jazz, helps you to kind of understand where it comes from in the culture, just like with classical music. So this young man, is it a young man that's doing this?
Yes.
Okay. Classical is part of the foundation. You learn everything you can. Like, because what you want to do is you want to take everything you learn and you want to put it and bring it to yourself. And the more you outreach and look at all these different things and listen to country music or listen to indigenous music of the Amazonian tribe, you listen to all this music, it gets into your consciousness, it seeps into you, and then you're able to play with a worldliness, a more encompassing thing that's you. Because how you play is who you are. How you play is how you see yourself. So if you see yourself as a person who is, I'm a Mozart classical person and that's it, then everything you hear and perform and do will be through those lenses, through those eyes. You know what I mean? Like having a pair of glasses that this is how you see and hear everything. So the more we can learn about all kinds of music, and the history of it and the culture and the people it comes from, the more we begin to respect, first of all, our own culture, and the more we'll be able to have our own voice. Because being a musician or an artist is about you telling your story, and you are unique. Each individual is unique. Right? So when we talked about this in all of your classes, so for this young man in the most roundabout long way, I feel, continue to study classical music, because classical music, it has a certain chops to it. It's a type of discipline that trains you, and you don't have to think about how to play a scale, or if you don't have to think about that. That's the stuff that actually you let go of after a while once you get the technique down, right? But the thing of it is hearing. What do you hear? And jazz is a very rhythmic music. It comes out of drums. It comes out of the sound of percussion. And to go back to your original thing when you talked about Africa, when they brought the African people over to this continent as slaves, all these little hundreds of tribes, some of them weren't even friends, right? But there was all these different tribes that didn't speak the same language. And here you are on some plantation. You can't communicate with anybody. None of your family's with you. So you get on this place. So how do you deal with the pain and the suffering and just whatever you can get out of that? Well, it's part of a culture. It's part of what you're in. So you use what you were taught, what you bring with you, and then you use that to create an art to communicate, to like release or to understand where you are.
Right.
So I hope that helps him understand. It's not about the chops. I mean, it's not about the mixolydians and the, because if you can't hear any of that when you're at that moment of soloing and you're feeling something, and you can't automatically just naturally bring that to what you're playing, but you have to think about it. Now I'm going to do this kind of scale while I'm soloing. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know, and I'm not going to get it. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of people aren't, but some people are impressed with a lot of notes. So don't just, when you're up there playing and you feel like, oh God, I'm so tired, I don't know, I'm going to play a bunch of notes, and everybody's like, oh, right. So then you can get back into the swing of it. Sometimes you got to rely on things just to get through, sets, because you're playing a lot, so.
Right. Yeah, I do agree with you. That you cannot think about Mixolydian or Lydian or Aeolian or whatever. My melodic minor. I also told my students and a lot of people who discuss with me here that say that, look, When you play music, that means that you tell the story. You don't play scales. Scales is only for technique, but you don't play that. Oh, this is a good example, the analogy. I asked them, if you print a letter and then you edit the letter at the same time, can you print the letter? And they said, no, you can't. You see? So first you write the letter and edit it, and then after it is edited, you print it. So playing music is the same thing. You print. You are printing something. So you cannot edit at the same time. So if you edit while printing, for example, like you say, okay, now I'm going to play major 13 chords with sharp 11 or something like that. That is editing, and they're not telling the story. Yeah. As you said, also, a lot of people are so impressed and when musicians play a lot of notes and when they solo and as fast as they can and bebop, and they are so proud if they can play, or they are so proud if they can play something in a very complex of the Rachmaninoff of the Partita of Bach. And then I don't hear a story of them. I just hear something that is replicated, but not. It doesn't come from the person, the musician who plays it, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Now another question I would like to ask you. Oh, by the way, people, ladies and gentlemen who are in here and attending our discussion, once again, I would like to introduce who just came late. This is Veronica Nunn, my best friend for 40 years. And she is a jazz vocalist. She is a jazz teacher, vocal teacher. She's the owner of Dead Horse Record. And recently the Full Gallop Entertainment, where I am as a partner as well, from Indonesia. And she is known as Veronica Nunn, as well as a partner vocalist of Michael Franks. So if you have any introduction. And if you have any questions or you would like to comment something, just do type it here in the comment. If we know the answer, we will answer it immediately. If not, it will take a while. Or we will just Google and then look for the answer.
That's what I do. I Google.
That's why I have my big screen here ready. So in case I don't know the answer, I will Google.
I decided to do this outside. And at first I was over on the patio and the sun was moving. When I first started, it was great. But then as we got closer to this, the sun started coming to where I was sitting. It was like burning my face. I said, I can't sit here during the interview. So I had to find a new spot. But I've never done an interview outside, so it's nice. It's in our backyard and just I had to go inside the tent so I didn't get eaten up by gnats and mosquitoes. So.
And another thing, it's not only best friends, and we also did some concerts in Switzerland. We were roommates for about 6 months when Veronica was having her gig and her engagement in Switzerland. That's how we knew each other, precisely in Interlaken.
Yes.
Right? So yes. She was performing every night opposite of the restaurant where I played, which is called Restaurant Schuh, and Veronica was singing with Franklin McKay.
Mm-hmm. Place called the Saloon.
In the hotel Belvedere, the 5-star hotel opposite of the restaurant where I played piano every night. Not only every night, but also in the afternoon. This is how we got to know each other. And then I asked her to join me, to come back with me to Basel and stay with me for a while. And then so we wrote songs together. And then we performed in the concerts together. And then, later on, we're going to tell a little bit of funny story about how I was so drunk. And then, and there's in the open air festival, you remember?
Oh, yes, I do.
And then you had to put my clothes on because I was totally drunk and disappeared before the concert. But that was really,
when you're young. When you're young, you take advantage of youth. If, really live and appreciate youth and appreciate the freedom you have, you know, and your ability to really embrace all kinds of things, not to be inhibited in that. Because the thing of it is, I feel at that time when I was it was one of my most productive periods of time, and
Mm.
I thought very little about it. You know, it was just like I was writing, and you know, I didn't worry about if the song was perfect or not, or any. I didn't worry about any of that. I just wrote and played and sang and played and wrote and ran, and you know, it was part of just of a way of living. And then as you get older, you know, at least in this case, I kind of compressed more in. So now I'm more, well, I don't know, this melody is like, I don't like this, and I don't like how I sing this. And, you know, we become such hard critics on ourselves, you know? So I think
Yeah.
when you're young, it's important to experiment and really with music. And the thing about jazz, so to speak, is it's a language. It's a language
Right.
that's
Right.
used. Classical music is a language, you know? We were talking about music in India, you know, the raga and the tabla. It's a language. It's a classical Indian music art form, but that's not taught in schools. Okay, it's not
Mm-hmm.
taught in the universities. You know, you could take maybe a specific course, they might offer it. I don't know, but it's not like standard. And so I think that just for the message for youth out there is, you know, this is your time. This is your time. You are the ones that become the innovators that people like, you know, they look at, Michael Jackson, or they look at Prince, or they look at, Pat Metheny or Michael Franks or John Coltrane or Monk. All these people were young at the time when they created their music, you
Right.
know, and they were out there living and experiencing and doing it, and they became creators and innovators. And that's where it comes out of, is youth, you know. So I want, you know, the youth that are on this live thing to really understand your value, the significance of your existence and what you're doing now. And just the fact that you embark on an artistic career or artistic education is, it's like the greatest gift you can give to the entire world, and especially your country, you know. So I can't stress that enough. I mean, a lot of times people just blow off you thinking they're not, but they're the power. They're the power, and they're the future. You're the power. You're the future. You know, we old people here, we can only sit back and reminisce about, remember that time when, remember that time when we played that gig and I was drunk, and you know, that's what we do now. But you'll
Oh,
have these memories, and then when you're our age, you'll go, yeah, remember that time when I.
oh. By the way, oh, hello, good evening, Ima, Yuda, and good evening, Hanim. How are you, Hanim? I hope you're still there. Um, nice to see you here. So, everyone, once again, if you have any questions, please do comment, type it on the comment. We are not only discussing here, but we would love to read your comments or read your questions. And then if we do know the answers, we will answer it immediately. Otherwise, we Google. Okay,
Yes.
right. Now the next one is, okay. Before I go to then another topic, you are right. A lot of young people here, they do not realize that actually those musicians that they adore became their idols, that you name it, like Michael Jackson, Pat Metheny, whoever,
Yeah.
Brad Meldau, you know, in jazz, right? They forget that these people, these musicians that they adore or became their idols, when they became famous, they were young. So they were innovator. They did something new, and that is why, you know, innovative. And this is also a problem here in Indonesia. I repeat again, the critical thinking and the problem solving, and this never-ending copying of plagiarism. It's really becoming like a plague here, you know, like a plague in
Yeah.
music world
Hmm.
especially.
Hmm.
I mean, it's all
Yeah.
over the world, but in the music especially. And I am trying every day and every day to open their eyes and then to say that, look, if you want to study, like you said, embark in this artistic education, such as music, painting, especially music, you should really study until you can find your own sound and then be yourself, but not like, I want to be able to play like Brett Meldau. As you can see that on YouTube, a lot of the instructors, they show that, would you like to play like Hank Jones or Brett Meldau as a pianist? What's the point? You play like Brett Meldau or play like whoever, you know.
Yeah, that's
What's the
interesting
point?
because they play like other people. So, I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's like as the generations come, they start with something. You know, you always start with what's around you and what you hear. You know, and there's so many incredible jazz artists that I know that are not famous, but they are like the legendary leaders. There's a gentleman that passed away, Sonny Simmons. Brilliant. Do a lot of people know about him? No. A lot of the cats inside jazz do know about him because he was one of those types of innovative tenor players. But you know, it's I think the wanting to sound like someone is because I think we don't trust ourselves. We don't trust our own sound. We don't trust what we come up with. And so we figure if we duplicate what someone else does, they're famous, so everybody seems to like that. So I know that whatever I copy of that is going to be okay because everybody likes this person. This person's famous, right? So plagiarism is like, you know, it's a safeguard. It's like having a safety net. But the key is, when do we step out of that? So one of the things Big Nick Nicholas told me, and Big Nick Nicholas was John Coltrane's teacher. John Coltrane wrote a tune called Big Nick, and that's it. And so I started. He was my mentor when I first came to New York, you know, and I played with him and all the older bands, Doc Cheatham, Eddie Chambly, who was Dinah Washington's husband, you know, so I played with all of these people, and one of the things that Big Nick was teaching me was, he said, don't listen to vocalists. Don't listen to vocalists. Listen to instrumentalists. Listen to tenor players, horn players, piano players, bass players, flute players, even trombone players. And I'm just kidding. Trombone players are good. It's a running joke, but it's like drummers. Listen to every instrument, and then that is what you train your ears to hear. And so it was, you know, I sang for, I don't know, over 40 years before I started listening to vocalists. So the thing that I think about that is if we're going to mimic what instrument we play, because that's what we're hearing. If it's the piano, we're going to mimic that sound because that's what we play. But a lot of piano players, a lot of tenor players, especially like Lester Young and them, they listen to vocalists because they wanted the sound of their horn to sound more vocal than it did in the instrument, which is why their style is the way it is. You know,
right.
So that it's important to really plagiarism is a problem because you're not trusting who you are, and when we don't trust who we are, that makes us not authentic. Do you understand? We become a fake, and if you become a fake and you build your career and life on a fake, at some point you're not going to be able to keep going with it. You know, so the whole key for an artist, I feel, is to be authentic. And that's hard to do because you have to have a standalone spirit. You have to be courageous and stand up and say, this is how I feel, I'm listening to this, really breaking out of our boxes. You know, that's very hard to do because I was thinking this morning, like everybody was, some people here who don't want to wear masks, right? And the young one saying, I don't want my friends to think bad of me. I don't want my friends to think I'm not cool. You know, and I'm looking at a person with a mask on, and then I'm looking at a person on a respirator. So which one do you think is coolest for your friends? You know, like when it's all said and done, do you think your friend's going to think you're cooler with, oxygen thing in there barely breathing and almost dead? Or are they going to think you're cool with a mask? Who cares? The point of it is to really be your own person, and to be the kind of person that is compassionate and caring about other people as well, and understanding this connectedness. Because once we begin to understand this connectedness, then when we play with other players, we're not playing just ourselves. I play with Debbie. And together we create music. I play with Travis. I play with Michael or Charles or Jacques or whoever. I'm playing with them to create together. And that is not just in music. That's in everything in the planet. Everything in the planet. We live on the planet because we connect to each other. There's a person who farms. We buy our farming stuff from there. There's a person who makes clothes. We are connected in that way. And so music does not stand outside of that. It doesn't. It's part of culture. It's part of life, And I hope I answered that question, or did I not answer a question? I don't recall.
You did. Right. As you said, connected and not playing alone. I've been telling this for, maybe like for the last 40 years, to all my students in Europe and here in Indonesia, especially here in Indonesia. You play in the band together. And I also told my students every day in the class that, especially the vocalists, when they want to sing, they should not only listen to the vocalist, they should not only listen to Maria Callas in the classical world, or Jesse Norman, or Diane Reeves, or Rochelle Farrell, or Veronica Nunn, but they should also listen especially to the piano, to pianists, to the, as you mentioned, the saxophone player, trombone, drums, all kinds of instruments. Mm-hmm. Even I told them to learn and to study the ethnic music from all over the world. Like recently we discussed about the Bulgarian music. The choir, which is called the mysterious choir of Bulgaria, right? And they sang like the mountain sounds, and it's so amazing. And study also our own music in Indonesia, the keroncong, the gamelan, the sasando, from Sabang to Merauke, so that you can find yourself and then be honest, be genuine. So not only copying and copying, as I wrote it on Facebook, there is a quotation from me, a quote from me. I wrote that if you like to copy, be original than the original.
No, that's true. No, it's true. It is. Right. And, people don't realize that, with part of like Coltrane's sound, for instance, he studied and listened to Indian music, classical music, which is how he came about his sound around that modal and all that, So if people really want to be original, just go into your culture and find, and learn the music and the whole structure of that, then bring it to jazz or bring it to rock or bring it to pop or whatever kind of classical, whatever you want to bring it to. That's what makes it unique. The Brazilian jazz came about because it encompassed a lot of the African rhythms. It came in. There was the bossa, of course, which was more of the European stuff, and that was like, it's very easy going and mellow. And then when African influence came into that, now you got now you've got all this rhythmic sambas and things like that, which you wouldn't have had not the African part of it come into and embraced and then colored and infiltrated that, So take your own culture and your music and your art and bring that, or bring jazz, whichever way you want, to that. And that will be so unique. No one is doing it, and you're the only people who can do it because it's your culture. It comes out of your whole existence of generations. So it's something that is a natural thing that, should be, but it's not, because it's not in schools. They don't focus on having it in school for people to look at their culture and their art and their creation. It's not there. It's not in our schools. And it's not in, I know it's not in the other schools of the world. It's just not there. They don't want to fund that, because that means you're aiding and abetting, so to speak, um, intellectualism. Aiding
Yeah.
people who are educated, who can make very informed decisions about what they want their life, their planet, their world to be. And that's
Right.
dangerous. That can be dangerous.
Right. Right.
So yeah. So be
So
authentic. That's what we're
be
talking about.
authentic. Now, another question I have here. Well, before, please, everyone, if you have any questions, if you would like to comment, type it here. We are here to answer questions if we know the answer. So, a lot of young people here in Indonesia say that Mozart didn't go to school, and Charlie Parker didn't go to school. So, why should we go to school? That's what they asked. Uh, okay. So, what do
Okay.
you say about that?
Well, um,
Just tell us briefly.
I'll tell you briefly. Well, first of all, going to school, if you're going to look at it just in a basic way, Charlie Parker did go to school because he can read and write. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So school is an essential part of being able to get into society. You learn how to read, you learn math, you learn all these basic things. But as far as music's concerned, let me just take Charlie Parker, for instance. We're talking about African American in a particular period of time where not a lot of things were available to us. We couldn't just get jobs in corporate America and all of that to make a living. So we only had a very limited arena of how to make money and how to
Mm-hmm.
survive. And music is one of them. Music was one of the major ones, because all you had as a choice was to be janitor, right, or porter on a train, but nothing
Mm-hmm.
that could actually allow you to have any real true dignity in terms of building and creating and all of that. So music was one main thing, and then it branched off into other things that they allowed us to have, like in sports and things like that. But with Charlie Parker, there was no schools for jazz in terms of like Berkeley, like it is now. There weren't schools for that.
Mm-hmm.
It was experimental. Everything was, because you were in an environment and you were always segregated. It wasn't like, you could go to a white club and hang out, and it was all segregated. So African Americans were always in this environment of clubs and places to perform, whereas all African Americans and other musicians. So you listen and you hear and you learn from all these different people. And that, with
Mm-hmm.
Charlie Parker, that's what that came about. That was his school, and his creativity and what he heard, and then he listened to classical music, so he pulled in classical music stuff into his playing, and so all of that is, it's like taking what you hear and bringing it into where you are, right? And the irony of it is that if you go to a Berkeley or a college and you want to get your master's degree, you have to transcribe a solo of someone who never went to school to learn it in the first place. That to me is ironic. Okay, but in Charlie Parker's case, in Mozart's case, he was paid to play music. He was paid to
Right.
do it. The churches and all. That was his job. So he being paid for that, he spent all of his time. It's the same thing. Parker, it was his job. Mozart, it was his job. That's how they made a living. And so yeah, no, they didn't have a particular school, although Mozart had Salieri, who had studied other types of music going back in the early part of Western music. So he did get schooling along that lines of composition and music, right? But because so much of it was improvisation at the time, you wrote a piece, the theme, and you improvised over it, and then, the churches and the kings and stuff are paying for you to do it. But they did have some formal education around it. And Parker did too, in a way. You usually have some person, like when I grew up, a music teacher, Miss Douglas. She lived, I'll never forget it. And we would be there for piano lessons on Saturdays. The only day you had free as a kid out of school to run around and do it. And we were in her house all day with these piano lessons that she could give us, for what she could give us to teach us the basic. So yes, school is important, if not for anything, to learn the basics, to learn the alphabet of the thing you want to play. And they all had teachers, some form of teaching. You know, there are people who don't have it. You know, they pick up an instrument and they just listen to the sound and what they hear and all that, but they may not be able to notate it, or they may not be able to tell you, I'm playing this or playing that, you know. But school is, education is something that is not just inside a room. It's also everywhere you're around. Like this tune that I recorded called Robin's Song, it's a Michael Franks tune. And I asked him, how did you come about that melody? He wasn't taught this. He wasn't in school to taught it. But he said he was outside and he was listening to Robins. And they did this, ba-da-da-da-da. That's the melody that these birds were singing outside. And so he put this in a song. So that's education. You understand? Right. But he, you know, it's like, it's hard to describe it. I don't think you can separate it really. I do think there's a problem when it is all it is, you know, confusing you with knowing what a mixolydian is and all of that. That's confusing, I think, you know. I don't think it's as important as being able to have an ear to hear what you're doing. That to me is first and foremost, being able to hear it. If you can hear it, eventually you can figure out what it's called. But it's right now knowing what it sounds like and how to duplicate it on your instrument.
That is why in our school, for example, the ear training is the most important thing. Because as you said, you have to be able to hear. Because if you cannot hear, you can copy as much as you can, but then you will never sound as good as you want to be. And then speaking about what you just explained about Charlie Parker and Mozart, I think also that because they don't know the history. And one thing that they keep forgetting, that this is Jakarta, right? Charlie Parker was in New York, and that's a different culture, and it is their culture. So if you in Jakarta, especially when you have never been abroad, and you want to study jazz, and then you think that by learning the licks and the chop and just listen to Charlie Parker, or if you can read the notes and then you read the lead sheet and then you started to learn it, and then you think that you can play jazz already. I don't think so. And this is ironic. That's what I agree with you about being ironic. One thing I repeat again, they forget that New York and Salzburg in Austria. It's in Austria in Europe. It's a different environment, different condition. And that is like 300 years ago concerning Mozart, right? Yeah. About Charlie Parker, I mean, I wasn't even born yet when he started playing saxophone, right? So if you as a person who lives in Jakarta plays jazz, and you think that, oh, I don't need to study because Charlie Parker, and if you dare to say Charlie Parker and Mozart didn't study music, why should I study music? I think that is quite, I would say, stupid, because you don't know the whole history behind that.
Right. Plus, it's a different time. You know, it's a completely different time. Their environment was their school. And we need to use right now our environment as our school. And if you have access to a Salieri, which I would say you're like, you know, or whoever was in Parker's life, I'm sure if I read the bio, it'll talk about all of his influences and people that he listened to, and you learn bits and pieces from that. But a school environment gives us discipline and structure. I think that's very important, but also in a lot of the schools in like Berkeley and especially William Patterson, where Travis graduated from, Travis told me they didn't spend a lot of time on the theory part, the theory part of it or the history, but basically the playing. It's the playing of the music. It's really playing it every day. To become a great long-distance runner or to be able to lift 800 pounds, you have to gradually lift weights and keep doing it every day until you get to a point where you can do that. And the more you play, the more you get to understand your instrument. And that's like with Jimi Hendrix, or another favorite guitarist that I really liked was Stevie Ray Vaughan. Apparently, these guys, and Coltrane would fall asleep with the horn in his mouth. Stevie Ray Vaughan was always had his guitar with him, always, So it's like Wes Montgomery. All these people, they live and they were always with their instrument, discovering everything you can about it. So that's where it's like, not sometimes colleges don't teach that, but if you fall in love, I know how when people fall in love with things, you fall in love with a person. Oh, I love this person. Oh, they're so amazing. And I just want to be around them, and you walk down where they are, and you want to see where they are on Instagram. You love them. All you do is think about them day, and you can't wait to be with them. It's just that love of your instrument, love of being an artist. That's what that is. You fall in love with it. And so every day is something new and exciting, and you're just glad to be a part of it. And when you fall in love, you want to know everything there is to know about that person. So it's the same with your instrument. You should want to know everything there is, not just like what the teacher's teaching you, but, well, what does this sound like if I do this? Or what does this sound? This is interesting. And then especially with your cultural music, with the music of your country, you have just a wide variety of really unbelievable sounds of instruments that you have that has never been incorporated in any Western music. So it's just you have all of this here, and a school like your school encourages that. Some schools don't encourage innovation. It doesn't encourage. It's okay if you don't want to do this kind of music, but whatever music you do, you know what I mean? Learn it and understand it.
We still have another 15 minutes to go, and then here is a question from Mr. Kashvi. How are you? We are doing fine, and he said, hi, Ibu Deviana and Veronica. Good to see that you both are doing good. What do you think about finding our sound by imitating and developing an existing sounds? That's his question. Would you answer that, please?
Well, we were talking about that briefly earlier. My suggestion is, whatever instrument you're learning how to play, listen to a whole lot of other instruments as well. And we were talking about that. So if you play the piano, don't just only listen to piano players. Because a lot of the great keyboard piano players, their actual phrasing of their instrument comes because they were phrasing like another instrument, not like the way the piano is phrased. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Right.
So that's how you can emulate. You emulate something that is not your instrument, and see if you can get that same kind of phrasing from the instrument you're playing. Because the trumpet, a trumpet's phrasing is very different than a tenor phrasing. And it's very different than the way the bassist phrase or way a drummer plays all of these different rhythms. So I think if you want to really develop your own sound, is to listen to other instruments, not the instrument that you play, and then try to apply what that is, how they're phrasing in that to what you're doing on your instrument. That's my answer to that. But I need to Google it because I could be wrong. No.
Well, my answer is very short, because I think that they have been listening to what I said for so many times in the school. I always said to the pianist the piano student, when you see the keys, there are 88 keys. Always think that all the range of the orchestra instruments, from the double bass, the tuba, until the piccolo, are already there.
Yeah.
And when you play orchestra. You don't play piano. That's what I said. Or if you want to play funk or R&B, just think as a band. So you play with the left hand, the bass and the drums, and then on the right hand, and then you play the guitar, phrasing, and the piano and the saxophone. Even try to emulate the violin sounds with the sustain pedal on the piano. I've been doing this, Veronica, since I was 7 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I always imitate the instrument and try to apply it. And that is why I found when I was 9 years old, I could play bossa nova with piano because I was always listening to the guitar pattern and the samba like that. So I applied it. I tried it. Yeah, it sounds like it. And that is very important, like you said. Listen to vocalists, to instrumentalists, all kind of instrument, even to claves, because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes they think that they underestimate it. No, you should know that these are the how do you call it? The percussions are very important to create the atmosphere of the music. Sometimes, even though they just play it like, tuk, ding, ding,
Mm-hmm.
ding, 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 ding,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
tuk, ding, 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 ding. Even
Yeah.
just one in 8 bars,
Mm-hmm.
but that one, tuk, it makes the music sounds good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So we
because
should.
it's where it is. It's exactly where it
But you
is.
know what? Ironically, I used to make fun of the classical musician. I said, uh, uh, you know what? What is so important to study music when you end up in the orchestra playing the triangle, and every 150th bar you play, doo-doo.
Oh yeah. Oh, what
And
about
you
the
studied.
what about that gong player that after everything's and he's just standing there sipping soda, whatever, on his phone. Then his time comes to go boom, and that's it. And you ask, well, I'm with the New York Philharmonic. What do you play? Well, I play a triangle. It's like, oh, okay. No, I mean I'm not knocking it because there could probably be somebody on here who wants to master the triangle.
Well, I mean, it's
And you
very
go
important,
for it.
triangle. Yeah.
Well, who knows? We don't know about jazz triangle players. I mean, really, I don't know of anybody recording that. So, I'm probably sure somebody's out there doing it. So.
So, Kashvi, we hope that we answered your question. Hello, Mr. Mazumdar. How are you? So now your name is every nowhere music. Always a fan. Thank you. Thank you very much. Hope you're fine. Everyone here, stay healthy. Okay, we have another, let's say, not about approximately 10 minutes to go.
Okay.
I would like to ask you one last question.
Okie dokie.
I mean, we could go on and on. I mean,
Yeah.
so
My battery all went down now on my phone.
okay. So some tips.
It's fine now, but just.
Okay, as a musician, Veronica,
Okie dokie.
what can you give the people here some tips for musicians and music students? Just random, what kind of,
Yeah.
not special, but what is
Well, I
your
tell you,
suggestion?
overall, this is what I feel is really important is to follow your dream. Really follow your dream and commit to it. Make a commitment to it and say, this is what I really want to do. And to fall in love with your instrument, like I said, so that it becomes not so when you have to practice for a couple of hours a day, it's not something you don't want to do. It's something that you really don't mind doing once you get into it. Be authentic. Really I feel to be an artist is really to be the kind of person that is capable of looking at yourself, really looking at yourself honestly and exploring what what your strengths and weaknesses are, to really look at yourself and see what you can contribute to the world, because really it's all about how do we create value. And as an artist and as a student, how do we create value in our school? How do we create value with the other students around us and connecting and assisting them? And then when we get out into the world, how do we create value? And how do we help people through what we do? And sometimes it's something as simple, like I know there have been stories where Michael, people have come up. A woman was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she said to me that it was his music. This music helped me get through my bout with cancer. And I listened to his songs every day, and it really helped me get through my life. And that's why we do this, is so that we're able to, to share parts of ourselves that is the part of ourselves that is human, that is humanistic, that care and have compassion with other human beings. And I think that is the main reason why we should be doing this at all, is to really to show our humanness and to connect to other human beings in that way, so that we're not fighting, that we're not, even though I might be African American and you might be Indonesian, or you might be, a white supremacist or whatever that is, that we can use art to bridge that gap and to have a better understanding. And that's what our role is. That's what our job is, really, as artists. But to do it as we are, not always be yourself. Always be yourself, and you make sure that your whole life is driven by you finding out who you are and not being afraid of that. Don't be afraid of that. And if it's not like everybody else, that's okay. Actually, it's better, because we tend to want to fit in. We do. I understand that, the peer pressure, and, it's tough, but, and you're going to have a lot of problems when you're different, okay? That you're going to have a lot of problems when you think different, you act different. A lot of people are not going to be nice to you. They're going to try to tear you down or make your life difficult, but you are greater than you know. And as long as you keep that in mind, that you have this unlimited potential, then nothing will stop you. Nothing will stop you. If your friends don't, like, hey, that's fine, they can stay where they are. Stay focused on your goal and your dream and create value. And that's pretty much a tip that I would give from just my life. I don't regret anything in my life. Not one thing. Not one thing I've done. So I think it's important to have that kind of life where you're not, you're following your heart and you're not, regretting. And practice. Wynton Marsalis says that a lot, and he's right. Practice. That's the one thing I don't do enough of, but I should do more of that. So I'm kind of bad at that. But I practice, but not as much as I should.
Good. If I may add to that, is that if we love music, we want to know everything about music. But if you only study the licks and chops, or memorize the notated music, like in the classical music, just memorize it. I find it's not in love with music, but it is infatuation.
Mm-hmm. Or
it's
fear.
Just an infatuation. Or fear.
It has fear, because you're worried you're going to do something wrong, Jazz is great because you don't do anything wrong in jazz, Some of the bad notes are the things that make something work.
Right. So, what else I wanted to say before we end our discussion? Before we split. Right.
Split the scene, man.
Yeah. That is what I exactly. That when you are different, you tend to have enemies. I mean, you are not an enemy to everyone because you are not being hostile, but a lot of people are hostile towards you because you are different. I experienced this a lot here in Indonesia, also in Europe before. But I don't care. I always tell my students, I do not want to be like another musician. I am me, myself. I'm Deviana. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter. They can talk bad about me and behind. But it is so funny, until today, I haven't seen anyone yet, nobody dare to come to sit in front of me and to say what they want to say. I haven't yet experienced that here.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wish that instead of spreading the hoax and everything bad, in the social media, on the social media, why don't you just come right directly here to the school and then sit in front of me and then tell me that you disagree with my opinion or with what I do, and then so you can hear my opinion, but not behind my back, because that is cowardice.
Well, it's true. It is,
Right.
and that is a coward way. And, that is when disunity comes about. That's what I was talking about earlier, of how we're connected and how when we support each other, we're stronger than if we divide. Because dividing is conquering. You can conquer things when it's divided. But when we're
Right.
unified, there's nothing that we can't do. We call it many in body, one in mind. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was horribly bullied when I was a kid. I mean, I was bullied, because I was very different. And I'm actually very grateful to having had that, because it really put me in a place where I thought for myself. I did things on my own. I didn't need to have, I'm not the kind of person that's going to go to the bathroom with three other girls who sing, you're going to go to the bathroom, and all three of them go to the bathroom. I'm not that kind of a person. I've always been a loner because I love people, and I don't have a problem being around people, but I've always had to stand alone because of being different. And so I understand how hard it is to be different, and I understand how many people envy that, and they have a problem with it because they want to be able to be authentic, and they just don't know how, or they're
Right.
afraid or whatever. And that's, people have their problems, and that's because they're suffering. There's a level of suffering there, and they don't have tools to really help them break free, to really connect in the way that they could, and how it could be so much better for them if they do. And so we are tolerant. We understand that as bodhisattvas and these people with hearts, open hearts. We're like, okay, I know this person has a problem with this. That's okay. I'm going to continue to do what I'm doing. I'm going to continue to create value. I'm going to continue to help these people. I'm going to continue to do this. And as long as we have that way of thinking and have open hearts, because the heart is what communicates, we're okay. And those haters, there's always going to be haters. It's always going to be haters. I mean, there's just no way around it. There's going to be people who ain't going to like what you do. They're not going to like you. They're not going to like what you wear. They're not going to like something about you. You don't even know what it is. Like, what is it you don't like? I don't like the way your glasses fit on your face. Fine. Whatever it might be. I don't like the way you hold your pencil, your cup. I don't like that. Whatever. We're going to have tons of that. You know what I mean? But what do? We got to keep living.
But funny thing, it is so funny that a lot of people who don't know you personally or who don't know me personally, they don't like me. I don't care. I really don't care. Yeah, they can be haters forever. I don't care. They can be a bully forever. I don't care. I just do my thing. You do your thing. And the most important for me is the compassion, to be compassionate as a musician, care about the environment, care about the animals, care about humans, care about everything surrounding.
Yeah. And
Right?
that's the key, because that's what we're all connected. And this COVID is telling us this, and we having, it's telling us it doesn't care if you're rich, poor, great, famous, not. It doesn't care. It just wants to survive, and it's relying on the fact that we divide ourselves. This little tiny thing you can't even see is the virus, and this virus has infiltrated all of the world. In that we're now, we're coming to see that we are dependent on each other, and it doesn't make a lot of people happy. Because some people just always thought that they were separate from everybody, better, more, whatever, whatever that might be. So, if we keep our focus, right?
Yeah.
Keep our focus
Right.
on what's important in terms of humanism and respect for life and creating the best music we can and having fun and loving and enjoying every moment that you're here, because it's always in this moment you can affect any change, but it's only in the moment. You can't do it yesterday and you can't do it tomorrow, but you can do it right now. What you do right now at this moment is what affects everything going forward. So we should be aware of, at this moment, what am I doing? At this moment, how am I feeling? How do I think? Am I hating this person? Am I trying to memorize this lick? What am I doing in the moment? That's all there is. you know. And that is more metaphysical, and I didn't want to go there, but
We can talk about metaphysics in our next discussion, right?
and next
Because it is,
discussion.
yeah, about metaphysics in music. How about
Yes.
that?
Oh, that'd be great. Ooh, I
Right?
love that. Uh-huh.
Okay, so we make an appointment for the next time, then we will discuss about metaphysics in music. Right.
Yes, that would be
Okay,
great. So
my
thanks
dear friend.
everybody for joining. I mean, I appreciate you guys logging in on this. You know, I miss you guys so much. You have no idea. And I can't wait for us to get to a point where we're all able to cooperate and and I can come back over and spend more time with you and hear you and hear your stories and, you know, hear your music and hear your skills. And a lot of you have graduated. I've done amazing jobs. I'm following it, and I'm just so proud of you. So just so you know.
Okay, thank you very much, my dear friend,
Yep.
for the discussion tonight, and thank you also for everyone here who are still with us. And then we'll see each other again next time in the next discussion, which is metaphysics in music.
Maybe.
Maybe. Well, let's plan for that.
Okay.
Okay.
All
So
right.
thank you very much, everyone, and thank you, Veronica. I love you, my
I
friend,
love
and
you
then
too. Yes.
see you
Mwah.
very soon again. Mwah,
All
mwah.
right then.
Bye.
Thanks
Bye,
again. All right.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.